Welcome, everyone. My name is Vic Chima, and I'm a K-12 program advisor at the Department of Education and Early Learning. I'm here to bring you the info session for the Homelessness and Housing Support Services request for investment. Before we get started, I recommend that you pause the video and make sure that you have the RFI document to reference during this info session. You can follow along with a printed or an electronic copy. I'll be sharing page references throughout this info session so that you can follow along with your own copy. Also, make sure to note any questions that come up. You'll be able to submit those questions to deelfunding@seattle.gov after this info session. Here's our agenda for today's info session. We'll begin broadly with the FEPP levy and then narrow it down to the Homelessness and Housing Support Services RFI and the corresponding application. Finally, we'll talk about next steps and how to submit questions. This RFI is funded by the Families Education Preschool and Promise, or FEPP levy. The FEPP levy provides $619 million over 7 years to advance educational equity, close opportunity gaps, and build a better economic future for Seattle students. In order for the FEPP levy investments to achieve the goal of educational equity, meaning access to educational opportunities and academic achievement are not predicated on a person's race or socioeconomic status, city, school, and community partners will need to be innovative, use data to inform practice, be flexible, and be held accountable for improving outcomes for students. The FEPP levy invests across the educational continuum with specific goals for each stage of a student's experience. In preschool, FEPP investments will prepare students for success in kindergarten. In K through 12, FEPP investments will provide physical and mental health services and learning opportunities that ensure students graduate from high school prepared for the college or career path of their choice. In post-secondary, FEPP investments promote the attainment of a certificate, credential, or degree. The FEPP levy is guided by a set of priorities and principles that, among other things, include a focus on historically underserved students and communities, data-driven and outcomes-based decision-making, supplemental services that complement existing funds, and a clear accountability structure that will ensure that we reach our goals. The FEPP levy will purpose funds in 4 investment areas: preschool and early learning, K-12 school health, K-12 school and community, and the Seattle Promise. The RFI that we're discussing today, Homelessness and Housing Support Services, falls under K-12 school and community. So let's zoom in on that FEPP levy investment area now. K-12 and community investments offer supplemental services focused on closing opportunity gaps for the highest needs students, schools, and communities, with a particular focus on college access and job readiness. Let's zoom in once again on the types of K-12 and community investments. So the FEPP levy has 4 types of K-12 and community investments designed to achieve the intended outcomes. These 4 types are school-based, opportunities and access, wraparound services, and culturally specific and responsive. The Homelessness and Housing Support Services RFI falls under wraparound services. So let's zoom in once more on that investment type. Wraparound services mitigate non-academic and socioeconomic barriers that impact a student's ability to be successful in the classroom. Family support services, homelessness and housing support services, and sports and transportation investments make up our wraparound services investment types. Again, we're discussing the homelessness and housing support services RFI today. And now you can see how this RFI supports the broader wraparound services strategy, which in turn supports the broader K-12 school and community strategy, which finally supports the broader overarching goal of the entire FEPP levy. So that concludes our overview of the FEPP levy and how this homelessness and housing support services RFI fits into it. We're now going to move into the second part of our info session, which is the RFI itself. So here is a summary of this RFI. The purpose of the RFI is to select applicants to provide emergency assistance funding, connection to services, and case management to help unstably housed SPS students and families and prevent further homelessness. Eligible applicants to this RFI are housing service providers who provide prevention housing supports to Seattle families with school-aged children. We'll discuss budget and the contract award in more detail in a few minutes, but at a high level, each RFI applicant is eligible to receive up to $296,145 for school year 2022 to 2023. Applicants can submit budget proposals for less than this amount, but not more. And again, this is the amount available for the school year 2022 to 2023. Applications are due by 3 p.m. on Monday, May 23rd, 2022. And just again, returning to the term, we talked about how much funding is available in this first school year, but overall, the term of this investment is for September 2022 to August 2026, so the next 4 school years. Awarded applicants will be able to reauthorize their contract annually, conditioned upon achievement of contract outcomes. If you have any questions about this, feel free to send us a question at deelfunding@seattle.gov. So let's take a look at a general timeline for this RFI. So we're in phase 1, request for investment. The RFI has been issued, and we are actually now in the second row, the RFI information webinar. That's what you're watching right now. In a few weeks from when this video was recorded, we'll have the technical assistance sessions on Wednesday, May 4th and Wednesday, May 11th. You'll have up to Wednesday, May 18th to submit your questions, and your RFI application is due by Monday, May 23rd. We're going to be focusing on phase 1 over the next few slides, and we'll revisit a few details about phase 2 at the end of the info session. So let's take a closer look at what this RFI is all about and what type of proposed programming DEEL is looking for from applicants. So there are 3 main components of this investment: emergency assistance funding, referral and connection to services, and client-centered housing case management. And the overall investment goal is to provide funding assistance to help unstably housed students and families and prevent further homelessness. There are more details about what each of these components comprise of in the RFI application document, But broadly speaking, emergency assistance funding is funding that the awarded organization will provide eligible families to help prevent them from falling further into an unstable housing situation. This could be rent, housing deposits, or other housing-related expenses. Anything that helps the family stay in the home they're in or find stable housing. If you have specific questions about what is considered an eligible housing-related expense, jot that question down and send it to deelfunding@seattle.gov. Referral and connection to services. DEEL is looking for applicants who can provide both housing support services to families in the form of emergency assistance funding and client-centered housing case management, as well as providers who know how and where to refer families in need of other services that might be non-housing related, as well as referring the family to alternative housing resources provided by partners such as City of Seattle, King County Regional Homelessness Authority, etc. In client-centered housing case management, number 3, this is where the awarded provider will provide progressive engagement with the family to help them navigate their housing search or efforts to stay in their current home. So these 3 components together make up what this RFI is all about. The key outcomes that we're aiming for through this RFI are listed here, and these should be front of mind for your organization as well, both during your proposal development as well as throughout implementation of the homelessness and housing support services. So the main outcomes we're talking about here and that we're aiming for through this RFI: attendance, school stability, permanent housing, no entries into homelessness. Attendance, we want to see students be able to attend more of their in-school learning and not have housing-related barriers impact their attendance at school. School stability, what do we mean by school stability? We want to see students who are able to stay in their school, not be in a situation where, because of their housing situation, they're needing to change schools within a school year to school year. We want students to be able to benefit from the stability of being in one school like their peers. Permanent housing. We want to see families find and reach a situation where they're not in temporary housing, they're not in unstable housing, they are in a permanent, stable housing situation where they are able to fully focus on other items besides housing, and especially being able to focus on their students' education and not have housing, unstable or temporary housing, be something that is a barrier to their students' academic experience. And no entries into homelessness for our families that are maybe on the verge or on the edge of falling into homelessness. We want to make sure that this RFI supports those families to make sure that those families do not reach a state of homelessness. So let's take a closer look at some of the other components of this RFI. For a family to be eligible to benefit from a program provided through or funded by this RFI, students must be enrolled in Seattle Public Schools. The organization must serve students experiencing homelessness or housing instability. The organization must be responsive to referrals from school staff for families or students who need support, need to be screened, need to be referred, or receive services. And the organizations that will ultimately be awarded this RFI need to be able to meet families at the location that is most convenient for them. Also, implementing culturally responsive programming, which incorporates the following program elements that we have listed here: housing case management, staff and professional development, family and community involvement. So this is a very important slide, so I encourage you to actually pause the video here and read through this on your own before continuing. A critical component of this RFI and the subsequent service delivery is the co-design process. The co-design process is where the selected awardees for this RFI will collaborate with DEEL and the Seattle Public Schools to ensure the program is set up for immediate success and complements existing systems and resources supporting unstably housed students. This means that your organization should be prepared for a very collaborative partnership, both in the co-design process and throughout program implementation after DEEL has approved the results of the co-design process. In terms of timeline, here's how this will look. RFI awards will go out in July of 2022. The co-design process will take place in the fall, listed for September through November. And program implementation is expected to start no later than December 2022. And that really depends on the co-design process. So which organizations are eligible to apply for this RFI? DEEL is looking for applications from housing service providers who provide prevention housing supports to Seattle families with school-aged children. We really want to emphasize experience providing support to families that attend Seattle Public Schools, since that is our target population as outlined in the FEPP levy. If you're an organization that has the experience supporting homeless adults or supports Seattle families, but not necessarily with housing support, we still welcome your application, but encourage you to think deeply about how you will adapt your organization's knowledge and expertise to specifically support unstably housed Seattle Public School families. Here is how RFI applications will be evaluated, including how many points each section is worth. There's a lot of detail about each of these components in the RFI application on pages 6 through 8. I invite you either to pause the video here and follow up on that, or to finish this info session and then follow up on the details in the application afterwards. But just broadly, these components, these evaluation criteria are program overview, your organization's commitment to program components and collaborative design process, past experience and demonstrated ability, organizational and administrative capacity, cultural competency and responsiveness, and planning for challenges. So instructions to applicants as they're preparing to apply for this RFI. Remember that RFI submissions must meet all technical compliance requirements as listed on page 10. This includes completing the brief online registration form in addition to submitting your full application document. We're going to take a closer look at what I mean by that in a few slides. And also just a reminder that this is a competitive process with no guarantee of funding. And you can see this orange highlighted section that says the application and all attachments must be submitted electronically or in paper form no later than 3 p.m. Friday, May 23rd. I just want to note here that this is you'll see actually on the RFI application that we're no longer accepting paper forms. So this is a holdover from a previous RFI. Just want to pause here and reiterate that we are actually only going to be accepting electronic submissions for this RFI. Let us know if you have any questions about that. Okay, so a complete RFI submission will include the cover sheet, program summary, work plan, budget, labor practices and policies, and the online registration form. That online registration form is separate from some of those other bullets. Again, this is all outlined in your RFI application. Cover sheet through labor practices and policies, that is all something that you'll submit electronically as attachments. The online registration form is a simple form that we're going to take a look at in just a few slides, but this is what is required for a full application. let's look through some of these components, starting with the cover sheet. What you'll need to include here is applicant information. So that's information about your organization. You'll also need to include your program information for your RFI. That includes proposed number of families that you expect to serve in this upcoming school year. Your proposed coverage area. Do you have a specific coverage area you aim to serve, if not all of Seattle? Perhaps your organization has strong ties to Southeast Seattle or West Seattle or another geography, maybe even certain communities. So you can articulate that here if you'd like. If you don't have a kind of a narrower coverage area, you can just write Seattle-wide. You'll also include total funds requested. You'll pull that from the budget submission template that you'll submit. We'll review that in a few slides, but you'll include that on your cover sheet. You'll also include contact information. And you'll actually add all of this information to the cover sheet, and you'll also enter this information into the online registration form that we've mentioned a few times. We'll show you a glimpse of what that looks like in a moment, but you'll put all this information in two places just to be safe. The next piece of this application is the program summary. This serves three key purposes. It gives you an opportunity to set the context for how a homelessness and housing supports investment would support existing strategies and or expand efforts to improve student outcomes and achieve Levy goals. It also helps reviewers understand your organization's unique needs, successes, and challenges. And the program summary helps determine your readiness to participate in the co-design process and ultimately implement homelessness and housing supports in collaboration with DEEL and Seattle Public Schools. The next piece is the work plan. There are more details in the RFI application itself for each of these sections, including the work plan. We can walk through some of these main areas: program overview, commitment to program components and collaborative design process, past experience and demonstrated ability, organizational and administrative capacity, cultural competency and responsiveness, and planning for challenges. You might be noting that these are the same sort of sections or areas that are going to be used for evaluating your application. So they're listed here as well. And just to note, for your responses to this RFI, specifically the work plan, are not to exceed 9 pages. We ask that you use the headings 1 through 6 to organize your response in the following order. And if this is sounding like a lot of information, remember that you can always ask questions, and actually all of the information we're going through on this info session is actually in the RFI application. And so you always have that at your fingertips to be able to reference if you're forgetting anything that we've talked about during this info session. So budget. You will be submitting a budget submission template. The budget should be aligned to your work plan that you share, and expenses should be tied directly to the services that you're proposing. And the budget should demonstrate effective uses of resources and reflect sound rationale for budgeting decisions. The budget is actually not scored by reviewers, but it is required. It's really encouraged that you think through how many families you aim to serve in the next school year, and then think about how much funding each family might need to achieve the goals that you're outlining in your RFI application, and kind of keep that ratio front of mind as you're crafting your overall budget. So labor practices and policies, you've probably seen this before, especially if you have submitted an RFI application with the city. But this basically is just a reminder that the City of Seattle values agencies that work to prevent labor disputes, because labor disputes could lead to work stoppages and adversely impact the ability of FEPP-funded programs to achieve intended outcomes for students and families. So you'll have an opportunity in your application to just confirm and answer the question, is your agency committed to avoiding labor disputes that disrupt services? Does your organization have standard practices and policies that uphold this principle? And you'll have a chance to briefly describe that. Okay, so we talked through what the RFI application entails. Let's talk about what is sort of coming next after this info session. We really encourage you to attend a technical assistance or TA session with DEEL staff. These are live sessions. There's 2 scheduled, Wednesday, May 4th from 2:30 to 4, and Wednesday, May 11th, also 2:30 to 4. You can find the links to these TA sessions on the Homelessness and Housing Support Services RFI site. And while you're getting ready for those TA sessions, you should start to develop your RFI plan. Obviously, when you attend those TA sessions, you can get some clarity, ask questions, and then continue to develop your RFI plan. We will be taking your questions through Wednesday, May 18th. You can send those to deelfunding@seattle.gov. And you should be planning to submit your complete plan electronically by 3 p.m. on May 23rd. To submit your application, you will need to submit these electronically to deelfunding@seattle.gov. In the subject line, we ask that you follow this format. So in brackets, you can put your organization's name and then specify that this is for the Homelessness and Housing Supports RFI. And again, all attachments must be received before 3 p.m. on Monday, May 23rd. And I've mentioned this before, in addition to submitting the application to deelfunding@seattle.gov, all applicants are also required to complete an online registration form. So the online registration form is a simple Microsoft Forms page that captures the same information that's on the cover sheet, which is page 11 of your RFI application. The link to the registration form can be found on the Homelessness and Housing Support Services RFI page under How to Apply, as well as in the RFI application itself. Why do we ask this for the same information twice? Since it's in the cover sheet and the online registration form. We collect this information twice to help ensure that your application has been submitted correctly and that there's no technical issues that would prevent your application from being evaluated. And here's a sneak peek of what this form looks like. It's very simple. It's less than 5 minutes and even shorter if you've already done this in your cover sheet in the RFI application. So returning to our timeline, we just walked through phase 1, requests for investment. Here's a sneak peek of what the phase 2, which is the RFI evaluation, will look like. Again, the RFI application is due on Monday, May 23rd. Evaluations of the RFI applications will take place May 31st to July 1st, and notifications will go out to applicants by July 22nd. So today's webinar is recorded and is being posted online, as you know, in our HHS RFI page. You can click on, if you're having a hard time finding that page, I always recommend folks to just Google DEEL funding opportunities. Scroll down until you find the Homelessness and Housing Support Services RFI tab. You can click on it and all these resources are there. Remember to email your questions to deelfunding@seattle.gov. To help us answer your question more quickly, please label your email like how it's listed on the screen, question, and then refer to the RFI, Homelessness and Housing Supports. Remember that the final day to submit questions is Wednesday, May 18th, 2022. And applicants who are interested in applying to this RFI should submit their RFI by 3 p.m. on Monday, May 23rd, 2022. Reminder, send your RFI to dealfunding@seattle.gov, and please use the formatting that's listed here for the subject. Go ahead and write your organization's name and then specify that this is the Homelessness and Housing Supports RFI. I want to thank you for listening in to this info session. I know it was a long one. I hope that it was helpful. Really appreciate your interest in this very important RFI. So thank you for your time, and we're excited to see you at the technical assistance session. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.